You can't be serious. Open that gate right now, or I'll have you arrested. That voice, shrill, indignant, entitled, was the first real crack in what had been a quiet morning. It pierced the still Arizona air like a splinter of ice through warm skin. And standing behind that gate, arms crossed, back straight, sun beating down on the brim of my hat, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an invasion. Let me ask you something, friend. When was the last time someone told you to open the gate to your own damn property and threatened jail if you refused? Maybe never. Maybe you've been lucky enough to live in a time when ownership still meant something, when your name on the deed was enough. But I can tell you this, on that dry, sun-bleached morning, it didn't mean a damn thing to the woman standing on the other side. Her name was Marlene Boyd, HOA president of Willow Creek Estates. A name I didn't even know 6 months ago. A name that now made my stomach tighten, like an old wrench slipping off a rusted bolt. She stood there, red-faced, gripping her phone like it was a weapon, flanked by 2 of her little clipboard-carrying lieutenants. I could see the judgment in their eyes. Not curiosity, not caution, judgment. And it made something old in me stir. Something I hadn't felt since the early days in the firehouse, back when people didn't ask if you belonged. They just saw what you were willing to protect. That morning, I wasn't just protecting land. I was protecting the very idea that a man could still draw a line and say, "This far, no further." You might be thinking I overreacted. Maybe I should have let her talk, see what she wanted. But here's what you don't know. This wasn't the first time. Not by a long shot. The story didn't start at the gate. It started the moment the new road went in behind my ranch. A slick, ribbon shortcut laid down by some greedy developer trying to boost property values in the HOA neighborhood. Willow Creek. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Like a place where retirees walk their dogs and wave at each other. But let me tell you something. That place is a mirage. What lives under it is control, plain and simple. Control dressed in beige vinyl siding and quarterly newsletters about community standards. I live just outside their jurisdiction. 20 acres of peace, hard-earned and well-maintained. My name is Jack Harrison, retired firefighter, 42 years old. Got horses, chickens, a dog named Diesel, and not a single HOA covenant hanging over my head. For 7 years, I'd been left alone. That land, every blade of wild grass, every dented fence post, I built it, cared for it, paid taxes on it. But the second that road connected Willow Creek to the highway through a back route near my property line, it was like I had opened a portal to another world. HOA joggers started cutting through. One guy let his Great Dane drop a pile right next to my porch like I was some rest stop. A kid rode his dirt bike through my vegetable garden. And then came the letter. A note from Marlene left in my mailbox, an actual physical mailbox that still had chicken feed dust on it, telling me I was in violation of community beautification codes. No signature, just a list of offenses and a passive-aggressive smiley face drawn at the bottom like she was inviting me to a damn bake sale. Now, I could have laughed it off. Some folks would have. But see, when someone tells you your land ain't yours in so many words, when they pretend your boundaries are just lines on a map waiting to be redrawn, it's not funny. It's personal. I wrote her back. Polite, straightforward. Attached a copy of the property deed, county certified, stamped and dated. I thought it was over. I was wrong. She wrote again. Claimed the maps were probably outdated, and that she'd be conducting an external inspection the following week. And that's how we got here. So picture it. I'm out feeding the goats. Sun's barely up. Diesel's barking low near the west fence. And I hear tires on gravel. Not just one car, 3. I look up. There she is. Marlene. In her Sunday best. Pearl white SUV parked like it's claiming territory. 2 board members trailing behind her like they're following a queen. No heads up, no courtesy knock, just straight up to my front gate. She smiles. Not a warm smile. A snake smile. Thin. Cold. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," she chirps. "As per HOA Regulation 14B, we are here to conduct an external inspection of the property." That was the moment I stopped playing nice. "I'm not in the HOA," I said, voice flat as the steel gate between us. She twitched. "That's a gray area," she said. "The recent expansion brings new parcels under jurisdiction." I held up my deed through the gate. Fresh printout. Highlighted boundary lines. "Nope," I said. "Try again." She didn't even look. Just snapped her fingers and barked. "Open the gate, Jack." I didn't move. "No, ma'am." That's when her voice went up 2 octaves and the kettle inside her finally boiled over. "You are obstructing a lawful inspection," she shrieked. "I will have you removed." Then came the phone, out of her purse like a drawn sword. "I'm calling the police," she said, dialing with shaky fingers. "You're an illegal squatter and a threat to community safety." A squatter. That's what she called me. You ever built a barn by hand? With busted knuckles and sunburnt shoulders? You ever hammered in your own fence posts at midnight because coyotes got too close to the chicken coop? And then had someone stand 10 feet away and tell you it isn't yours? I nearly laughed, but I didn't, because I knew how serious she was. And just like that, the world shifted. She started yelling into the phone, painting me as some unstable man hoarding land that didn't belong to him. Meanwhile, her 2 lackeys started backing away, clearly unsure of how this whole stunt was supposed to go. That's when I saw the lights, blue and red, flashing down the hill like a warning from God. I froze. Not because I was scared of the law. I've worked alongside law enforcement for decades. But because I couldn't believe it had come to this. That this woman, who didn't even live within shouting distance of my property line 6 months ago, had the nerve to weaponize the police over a fence. My fence. My land. My home. The SUV rolled to a stop. 2 officers stepped out. One I recognized, Officer Diaz, young guy, good head on his shoulders. Used to buy eggs from me. The other, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a hand resting near her belt. She was calm but alert. Marlene rushed toward them like she'd just survived a home invasion. "Officers! Thank God! That man is trespassing. He's refused lawful inspection. I'm the HOA president. I have full authority." The female officer turned to me. "Sir, name?" "Jack Harrison," I said. "This is my ranch. I've got proof." I handed over the deed. No hesitation. She took the papers, stepped back to read them, and that's when Marlene tried to slip past the gate. Like she could still win by pretending hard enough. I grabbed the gate hard. "You set foot on my land, and I pressed charges." Everything stopped. Officer Diaz looked over. Marlene froze. And behind her, boom. A crash. One of the board members had backed their hybrid into my mailbox while trying to make a quiet getaway. Dust flew. Metal crunched. It was almost poetic. The officers stepped in. Hands raised. "Everyone stay put," Diaz said. And suddenly, the weight of what had been a silent, creeping power grab fell all at once. Because this wasn't about flowers or fences. It was about control. It was about someone in a fake position of power trying to make you forget who you are and what you've earned. And I don't care how old you are or what part of this country you live in. When someone tries to tell you that your sweat, your time, your land doesn't count, you better damn well remind them. That morning I did. Not with fists. Not with shouting. But with papers, patience, and the unshakable knowledge that I was right. And let me tell you something. That gate didn't move an inch. Not that day. Not ever. Because where I come from, a man's property line is sacred. Not a suggestion. Not a guideline. And certainly not a gray area. So if you're reading this, maybe sipping your morning coffee on a porch of your own, maybe watching the wind move through trees you planted yourself, remember this. It starts small. A letter. A regulation. A smile with too many teeth. But if you don't stand up when it matters, if you don't dig your boots in, that line you drew will disappear before you even notice. And then what do you have left? That morning I drew the line. And by God, I wasn't stepping back. I wish I could tell you that morning at the gate was the end of it. That after the cops left, after Marlene's tantrum and the crushed mailbox, the world righted itself and peace returned to Copper Valley Ranch. But that's not how bullies work. They don't back down when they're wrong. They just find new angles. And Marlene Boyd, self-appointed Empress of HOA land, wasn't done with me. No, sir. That woman had tasted the idea of control, and like a tick sinking deeper into skin, she wasn't letting go easy. The next day, I found a printed notice shoved into the latch of my front gate. No envelope. Just folded, crumpled, and soaked with the morning dew. "You are hereby notified of a pending hearing regarding violations of community easement standards." It read like I was some teenager who parked too close to the neighbor's mailbox. There were references to county zoning codes, half of them wrong, and something about unauthorized gate installation within a shared-use boundary. Shared with who? The coyotes? My gate had been there for 4 years, standing strong, paid for out of pocket, installed by a local welder who brought his dog and shared a 6-pack after the job was done. But in Marlene's head, my gate was a provocation. A challenge. and she wasn't letting it slide. I drove straight to the county records office. No appointment, just my coffee in one hand and the crumpled notice in the other. The clerk at the desk, a kid barely out of high school, looked at the paper, squinted, and said, "Sir, this isn't from us. It's just got our letterhead, but the file number isn't valid." I nodded. That figured. A fake notice. HOA fiction dressed up in county branding. I asked him to pull up the zoning map. Took less than 5 minutes. And there it was, the line. Bold, black, and unmistakable. My ranch was nowhere near the HOA overlay. Not even close. I asked for a certified printout, signed, stamped, and laminated. I knew it wouldn't stop them, but I wanted that truth in my hand. Later that evening, I poured myself a glass of rye and stepped out to the porch with Diesel at my side. The sun was slipping down behind the ridge, painting everything in gold and rust. For a few minutes, it felt normal again. Still. But then I heard it, the faint hum of an engine, low and cautious. I stood, squinting toward the southern edge of the property, the one that ran along the edge of that new development road. A car. Not just any car. The same pearl-white SUV, headlights off, rolling slowly past the outer fence like a wolf sniffing for a weak spot. I watched it go, not moving, not reacting. But I took note. That wasn't the last time I saw it that week. By Thursday, HOA folks were acting like my back pasture was a damn trailhead. I caught a couple walking their golden retriever right along the fence line, letting it stop and dig near the irrigation pipe. Another man, older, in a tennis visor and sandals, had the nerve to wave at me while his kid threw rocks at my goats from behind the brush. I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice. I walked out there slow, Diesel at my heel, and I said, "Sir, this isn't a park." He just laughed. Said, "Well, according to the new maps Marlene passed out at the meeting, this land's about to be part of the Willow Creek Greenway project." Thought we'd get familiar. My blood went cold. Greenway project? I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I booted up the old laptop and searched the county project database. Took hours, but there it was. Buried under a shell company name, listed as Phase 2 expansion proposal, public easement and trail development pending annexation. And right there, my acreage. A red line drawn straight through my damn barn. I stared at that screen like it might catch fire. It didn't matter that the proposal wasn't approved. It didn't matter that I hadn't signed a thing. These people were planning around me. Planning to go through me. The next morning, I walked the back fence. Every post. Every wire. I ran my hand along the wood like I was shaking hands with each inch of ground I swore to defend. I hung new signs. Bigger ones. Bright yellow with bold red lettering. Private property. No easement. No trespassing. Not under HOA authority. I laminated each one and screwed them into place myself. Diesel barked every time a car passed by the ridge. He felt it too, that shift in the air. We weren't just being watched. We were being measured. Mapped. Surveyed in secret. That afternoon, I got a call from Tom, a buddy from the firehouse days who now worked with the Volunteer Emergency Services Board. "Jack," he said, "you might want to check the community bulletin." I didn't even ask why. I just opened the HOA's online newsletter. Yes, they had won, and scrolled past the bake sale announcement and the Lawn of the Month award until I found it. Community Expansion Information Session, addressing trail safety and access rights. Listed under topics of interest, proposed cooperation with surrounding landowners to improve accessibility and aesthetics. I slammed the laptop shut so hard the keys popped. Surrounding landowners. That was me. But I wasn't cooperating, and they damn well knew it. The day after, a man in khakis and a tucked-in polo shirt showed up at the gate with a clipboard and a half-smile. Said he was from the Willow Creek Community Alignment Task Force. Asked if he could just walk the perimeter and take some photos for context. I told him he had 5 seconds to turn around. He didn't need all 5. The next day, my mailbox had a large envelope inside it. No postage. Just the HOA logo and my name in bold letters. Inside, a printed cease and desist, claiming my signs violated visual pollution codes and obstructed community flow. Attached was a photo, one of my new signs, taken from the inside of my property line. That night, I rewound my security footage, frame by frame, and there it was, 2:12 a.m., headlights flashing across the fence, and a figure hopping out of the car, slipping under the wire and walking the edge with a flashlight. My property, my line, my rules, and he crossed it. He took that photo. That wasn't just disrespect, It was criminal trespassing. I printed the footage. Took it to the sheriff's office myself. Sheriff Cole, an old-school type, the kind who still believes in handshakes and land rights, leaned back in his chair and watched the footage twice. Didn't say much at first. Just nodded. Then he looked me in the eye and said, "You're not the first one they've tried this with. But you might be the first who fights back this hard. Keep everything documented. If they step foot again, call it in." "And Jack," I raised an eyebrow, "don't take your eyes off that fence line." I didn't. That night, I didn't even sleep indoors. Pulled a cot onto the porch, rifle at my side, and diesel curled against my boots. The stars above were clear and indifferent. The land was quiet again, but the air buzzed with tension, like the storm hadn't hit yet, but the wind already knew. So here's what I'll ask you, neighbor to neighbor. How far would you go to keep what's yours? What if the threat didn't come with guns or fire, but clipboards and paperwork and shiny SUVs? What if it smiled at you while it erased your boundaries? Would you see it coming? Would you know the fight had already begun? Because I didn't start this. I didn't ask for a war. But the minute they stepped through that line, the minute they started drawing maps with my land in it, I knew I had no choice. I didn't move out here to be controlled. I moved out here to be free. And freedom, my friend, doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for a vote. It stands its ground, even if it's the last damn man on the hill holding the line. I'll be that man. You watch and see. The thing about pressure is, it doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it seeps in like water through a cracked foundation, slow, persistent, and quiet enough that by the time you realize you're standing ankle deep, it's already too late. That's exactly how the next phase began. Not with another HOA notice or another SUV prowling past my back fence. No, this time they sent in something colder, more calculated. The man in the suit arrived just after noon on a Tuesday, the kind of heat-soaked day where even the cicadas were too tired to scream. I was repairing the chicken wire near the coop, sweat running down my spine, hands filthy, when I saw the car pull up. It wasn't the HOA-branded golf carts or Marlene's boat-sized SUV. No, this was a sleek black sedan, polished like a showroom trophy, rolling up my gravel drive like it owned the place. And when the door opened, I knew. This wasn't a neighbor. This was a messenger. He stepped out wearing a navy suit, silver tie, shoes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. He had slick back hair and a briefcase in one hand, like a goddamn banker had wandered onto my ranch. I stood slowly, wiped my hands on my jeans, and met him at the gate. "Mr. Harrison," he said, voice smooth as engine oil. "My name is Wesley Grant. I represent the Willow Creek Homeowners Association in legal and zoning matters." I crossed my arms. "You're standing on the wrong side of my fence." He smiled, like I'd just confirmed a hypothesis. "That's exactly what I'm here to discuss." He handed over an envelope, manila, heavy sealed. "This is a cease and desist order concerning your recent installations, fence enhancements, signage, and what the HOA considers obstruction of public right-of-way access." I stared at him. No blink. No shift. "There is no public right-of-way here," I said. "This is private land. Owned, surveyed, taxed, and protected." "That," he said, "is under review." And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just HOA arrogance anymore. This was lawfare. Paper bullets. Bureaucratic warfare wrapped in legalese, designed to grind me down until I either gave up or sold out. I didn't touch the envelope. "You can leave now," I said. Wesley didn't flinch. "Mr. Harrison, let me be frank. The HOA is prepared to offer a generous settlement to acquire an easement through your property. Double market value. Clean paperwork. You walk away with profit and peace." I leaned in just slightly. "You mean I walk away from my home?" His face didn't move. "This land is being repositioned for greater community use. Trails, green spaces, long-term planning. Your one property standing in the way." I smiled then, just a little. "Then I guess I'm the last man holding the damn line." I turned and walked. Didn't look back. The gate clanged shut behind me with a finality I didn't realize would echo so loudly. That night, I scanned the cease and desist page by page. It was boilerplate nonsense dressed up with HOA letterhead and county jargon. But what caught my eye was the signature. At the bottom, printed in bold, was Wesley Grant, ESQ. A quick online search brought up nothing official. No bar number. No legal practice website. Just some scattered mentions in HOA meeting notes across 3 different counties. That didn't sit right. So I called Mark Delaney. Mark wasn't just an old firefighter friend. He was the kind of guy you called when you needed dirt dug up without raising dust. A former private investigator turned rural consultant. If someone had secrets, Mark had a shovel. I told him what happened, what Wesley said, and asked one thing. Find out who this guy really is. He didn't even hesitate. Give me 72 hours, he said. In the meantime, I stayed vigilant. Put up motion-activated lights. Checked cameras every morning. Diesel never left my side, and I slept with one boot on. 2 days later, Mark called. Jack, he said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. You're going to want to sit down for this. Turns out, Wesley Grant hadn't practiced law in over 2 years. He was disbarred in Nevada for, get this, fraudulent land acquisition schemes. Fake easements, forged zoning proposals, the whole dirty playbook. And the best part, he wasn't acting alone. Mark traced HOA documents showing Wesley had been retained by Willow Creek's board through an off-the-books special project fund. The signature at the bottom of the authorization form? Marlene Boyd. I didn't even feel rage. Not then. Just a cold, grounded certainty. They had crossed a line. This wasn't just intimidation. This was conspiracy. That afternoon, I drove straight to Sheriff Cole's office. Didn't call ahead. Didn't knock. Just walked in, dropped the folder on his desk, and said, "We've got a bigger problem than property lines." He spent the next hour going through the evidence, his face darkening with every page. You're telling me the HOA president hired a disbarred lawyer to push through a fake right-of-way claim? I'm telling you, I said, this is coordinated. And I'm not their first target. Just the first one too damn stubborn to roll over. Cole stood, grabbed his hat, and said, "We'll bring him in." That night, the sheriff's department raided Wesley's office, a rented workspace behind a strip mall 2 towns over. They seized files, laptops, and one critical document, a letter from Marlene, authorizing Wesley to act on behalf of the HOA in annexation proceedings. Her signature, her seal, her fingerprints all over the fraud. Wesley didn't resist, didn't argue. He just said, "They promised me land if I made it work." The house of cards was starting to fall. And just when I thought I could finally exhale, I heard it. The sound of tires, fast and angry, ripping up my driveway at dawn. I threw open the front door barefoot. My barn was on fire. Flames poured from the roof like a dragon's breath. Smoke blackened the sunrise. I sprinted, grabbed a hose, called 911, but I already knew it was too late. Diesel barked, circling the perimeter, his hackles raised. My horses, thank God, were in the far pasture. But the tools, the feed, the harvest gone. Burned to ash in minutes. Sheriff Cole arrived as the last embers smoldered. He didn't need to ask. The look in his eyes said it all. Someone had firebombed my property. And the message wasn't just in the flames. It was in the voicemail that came an hour later from a blocked number. "Back off, Harrison. Sell the land. Or next time, it's your house." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, old rifle across my lap, one hand on Diesel's back and the other clutching the folder Mark gave me. My land wasn't just a pasture. It was a target, a battleground. And I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. I had spent my life running into burning buildings. But this time, the fire was mine. And I was done playing defense. I called Mark. "Get me everything," I said. "Every board member, every fund, every backdoor deal. I want to know who's dirty, who's scared, and who'll crack first." He didn't ask why. He just said, "Let's end this." Because the war they started with paperwork and polite threats had just turned real. And now they were going to learn what happens when a man who builds with his own hands gets pushed too far. You want to take my land? You better bring more than fake lawyers and fire. You better bring everything. Because I sure as hell will. The night after the fire, I sat on the porch with my old hunting rifle across my knees and Diesel lying flat beside me, ears twitching at every snap of wind. The barn still smoldered out back, glowing faintly like a broken memory. The flames had died, but the rage hadn't. I didn't sleep. I didn't try. I just stared into the dark, waiting. For what? I didn't know. Maybe for them to come back. Maybe for the guilt to fade. Maybe just for the sun, so I could start digging through the ashes. The next morning came slow, silent, and heavy with the smell of charred wood and scorched hay. I walked through the wreckage barefoot. My boots had melted by the door where I'd dropped them when the fire started. Each step crunched on cinders. The old feed barrels were warped beyond recognition. The tool rack I built with my father's hands lay blackened and broken. But somehow, nailed high on the west wall, one corner of the original barn sign survived. Copper Valley Ranch Estate, 1964. That piece of wood, half burnt, hanging there like a ghost, made my throat tighten more than anything else. I took it down, brushed the ash away, and brought it back to the porch like it was a wounded comrade. Sheriff Cole came by later that morning with news that didn't surprise me. The accelerant they used matches what we've seen in other structure arsons, industrial stuff. Not something you pick up at the gas station, he said. This wasn't random, Jack. This was deliberate. Calculated. I nodded. Any suspects? Plenty, he said. But no direct evidence. Yet. He handed me a small plastic bag. Inside was the charred remains of a homemade fuse. We found it at the base of the east wall. Timed ignition. Someone knew what they were doing. Diesel growled low. Cole looked toward the treeline. You sure you want to stay here? I don't have a choice, I said. They want me off this land. That's exactly why I won't leave. After he left, I walked the western fence line with Diesel sniffing ahead. That's when I saw it, half buried under a clump of dry brush, like something dropped in a hurry. A black duffel bag. I crouched down slowly, heart thumping, hand resting near my sidearm. Diesel barked once, sharp and urgent. I unzipped the bag and froze. Inside, a crowbar, a lockpick set, a pair of black gloves, and a manila folder with my name on it in red ink. Not pen, ink. That folder felt colder than steel. I opened it. Inside were printouts, maps of my property from every angle, aerial drone shots, zoning reports, even a valuation estimate for potential HOA expansion and recreational trail impact. One page stood out. It was a timeline. Not typed, handwritten. Bullet points. July, pressure local authorities. August, escalate with legal notice. September, trigger compliance action or create event. Create event. That fire wasn't just punishment. It was a damn tactic. My land wasn't just wanted. It was being targeted like a chessboard. That night, I called Mark again. They're planning something bigger, I said. I need names. I need dirt. I need leverage. Mark's voice was steady. You'll have it. Give me 48 hours. And Jack, yeah, watch your six. This isn't HOA politics anymore. It's a war of attrition. He was right. They weren't trying to win in court. They were trying to break me in real life, piece by piece. So I did what men like us do when we're cornered. I fortified. I put up new cameras, infrared, motion-triggered, linked straight to my phone. I bought 2 industrial floodlights and wired them into a generator. I planted steel no trespassing signs along every approach and chained off the side access road the HOA had tried sneaking down. I parked my truck sideways in front of the house like a barricade and started sleeping in shifts, Diesel always alert, always ready. Then, just as promised, Mark delivered. A thumb drive in a padded envelope left in my mailbox with no return address. On it were PDFs, photos, bank statements. One board member, Todd Brennan, had been moving HOA funds into a personal community outreach account. Another, Lisa Monroe, had 2 prior convictions for wire fraud under her maiden name. But the biggest fish was Marlene. She'd been siphoning HOA dues into a private shell company tied to a real estate firm out of Tempe. That same firm had submitted proposals to the county to revitalize underused land in Willow Creek's border zones. That land, mine. She wasn't just pushing for a trail. She was orchestrating a quiet annexation scheme, with herself at the center. The whole operation was built on lies and forged zoning requests. I had everything I needed, so I made one more call. This time to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Linda James, a local journalist I'd met back when she covered wildfire stories. She was sharp, relentless, and hated corruption more than anyone I knew. I sent her everything. The files, the video footage, a copy of the fake cease and desist. She called me 30 minutes later. Jack, she said, this is going to blow the roof off. Are you sure you want to go public? I looked out at the spot where my barn used to be. Linda, they already burned down half my life. I'm not hiding anymore. The story aired that Sunday night. Headline across the screen. Land grab in Copper Valley. HOA scandal exposed. The footage was damning. Interviews. Documents. Mark's research. Even a slow pan across the charred ruins of my barn. But the most powerful moment was when Linda looked straight into the camera and said, "This isn't just a zoning dispute. This is a hostile takeover of private land." And one man refused to be bullied. By morning, the phones were ringing off the hook. Messages from neighbors, strangers, reporters, even veterans I hadn't heard from in years. Some offered help. Some offered lumber. Some just said thank you. And just like that, something shifted. I wasn't just some stubborn rancher anymore. I was the front line, the last one standing against a crooked machine. And every man who ever got pushed off his land for being too old, too poor, or too proud, well, now they had someone in the ring. 2 days later, Sheriff Cole called. "We've issued warrants," he said. "Marlene's disappeared, packed up and vanished the night the story aired. But we'll find her." I believed him. But even if they never did, the tide had already turned. The HOA board resigned en masse. Lawsuits started flying. County officials launched a full investigation. My land was no longer in question. It was a monument. But I wasn't done yet, because as I stood there that morning, watching the sun rise over blackened soil and broken beams, I realized something deeper. They didn't just try to take my land. They tried to erase my history. My father's fence posts, my grandfather's barn, my family's name. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not now. Not ever. So I took the last bit of that old barn sign, the piece that said 1964, and nailed it to the new steel gate I had welded myself. Right below, I added a fresh plate. It read, "Protected by law, defended by legacy." Because I may have been one man, but I wasn't alone. Not anymore. And if you've ever felt that same pressure, that creeping hand trying to tell you what's yours is no longer yours, then you know exactly what I mean. They may come with papers. They may come with lies. But if they find you standing with your boots dug in and your story burning hotter than their schemes, then, my friend, they're already too late. I woke up that morning with the sound of hammers in my head, not from noise, but from purpose. The barn was gone, but the work had only begun. The sun hadn't even crested over the hills yet, but Diesel was already pacing, tail stiff, ears forward, nose twitching. He could feel it. Something had changed. Not just the weather or the wind, but me. I wasn't defending anymore. I was building, rebuilding, retaking. Every bit of ash they left behind was fuel. Every piece of evidence, every threat, every lie. Now it was kindling for a fire I controlled. And I wasn't doing this just for me. No, sir. This was bigger now. This was about every man who ever got told by a suit that he didn't understand his own land. Every rancher, every retired vet, every honest working man who put in decades of sweat and woke up one day to find a stranger with a clipboard telling him to comply. I wasn't going to comply. I was going to finish this. Mark called first. His voice had that edge, the kind that told me something big just broke. "Jack," he said, "we got it. Final piece. You're going to want to sit down." I didn't. I was already halfway to the truck. "Wesley Grant, he wasn't just disbarred," Mark continued. "He's wanted in 2 other states. But here's the kicker. He used a fake license number in Arizona to submit zoning documents. And Marlene, she signed off on it. In writing." "You sure?" "I've got the scanned files from the county clerk's own server. Notarized. Digital trail, timestamps, all of it. They knew exactly what they were doing." I hung up and went straight to Sheriff Cole. No detours. No distractions. When I walked in, Cole didn't even look surprised. "I heard from Mark," he said. "We're preparing charges. Fraud, impersonation, conspiracy, arson, you name it. I've got a judge ready to sign off on a full seizure of HOA internal documents. And Wesley?" He paused. "He's already in custody. Gave up Marlene to save himself." "You get her?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "But we will." For days, nothing. Just paperwork, interviews, a blur of phone calls from lawyers, reporters, officials, all wanting something. A quote. A comment. A chance to sell the story. But I wasn't talking. Not until I could end it my way. So I went quiet. Focused on rebuilding. Local vets and old firehouse friends started showing up without being asked, bringing lumber, concrete, rebar, sweat. One guy I hadn't seen since 2009 pulled up with a flatbed full of roofing panels and a thermos of black coffee. "You stood up," he said. "Now we stand with you." We worked 12-hour days under that Arizona sun, shirts soaked, hands blistered, nails bent and bloodied. And with every beam we raised, I felt something return. Not just structure, but identity. Then one night, 3 months after the fire, I got the knock. It was nearly midnight. Diesel barked low, but didn't charge. That was the first sign something was off. I opened the door, and there she was. Marlene Boyd. Not in pearls or power. No sunglasses. No SUV. Just a woman who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her eyes hollow. Her posture deflated. "I'm not here to fight," she said, voice quiet. I didn't speak. Just leaned against the frame, arms crossed, waiting. I came to say I'm sorry. I studied her. For what? For thinking I had more power than I did, she said. For assuming I could take what wasn't mine. For the fire. I didn't set it, but I lit the match in another way. I watched her carefully. No tears. No theatrics. Just exhaustion. You destroyed my barn. I lost everything, she replied. My house. My job. My savings. They're suing me now, the HOA members. Wesley gave up everything. I've got court hearings stacked into next year. You looking for forgiveness? I asked. No, she said. Just closure. I nodded slowly. Then take your punishment. Own it. Maybe you'll earn something back someday. She stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked into the dark. I closed the door and didn't look back. A week later, the new barn was finished. Stronger. Taller. Fireproof walls, reinforced roofing, sensor lights on all sides. Diesel had a new spot by the door, and the horses wandered freely again, tails flicking in the breeze like nothing had ever happened. But something had, and now it was time for the final card. I opened the safe in my office, took out an old leather pouch passed down from my grandfather. Inside was the original deed, dated 1964. But that wasn't the treasure. On the back, scribbled in his hand, was a clause, mineral rights. Verified, notarized, tucked away for decades like a secret only the land could remember. I'd known about it since I was a boy, but never cared much. I wasn't a miner. I was a rancher. But now, that clause had power. I contacted a small geological survey team, family-run, discreet. They spent 4 days running soil samples and cross-checking against state mineral maps. The result came in a week later. You've got copper, Mr. Harrison, the lead surveyor said. Not just trace. A viable deposit under the East Acre. If you wanted to extract or sell rights, well, let's just say you'd be set. I nodded. I don't want to sell. I just want it confirmed. Then you've got leverage, he said. Serious leverage. And so, with that paper in hand, I called a press conference. Right there on the ranch. Cameras rolled in. Linda from the local station stood ready. I didn't dress up. Just wore my regular boots, the old ranch hat, and the same flannel I'd been working in for years. I walked up to the microphones, held up the report, and spoke clearly. This land was never just dirt. It was never just fencing or zoning. It was family. It was sacrifice. And while some tried to steal it with lies and pressure, I held the line. Now it turns out, the very dirt they tried to claim is worth more than their entire neighborhood. There's copper under my feet, legacy in my veins, and justice in my hands. The next day, the headlines exploded. Man targeted by HOA sits on copper fortune. The story went national. Emails flooded in. Messages from landowners across the country thanking me, telling me their stories, saying, "You stood up when we couldn't." A month later, the Willow Creek HOA officially dissolved. The board disbanded. Marlene entered a plea deal. Wesley was sentenced. And my land, it remained mine. Untouched. Free. But this story isn't just about victory. It's about resistance. About knowing when the line in the sand has to be more than symbolic. About remembering that legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you defend. That gate at the edge of my property still stands, only now it bears a new sign. Copper Valley Ranch Private. Protected by law, loyalty, and legacy. And beneath it, smaller but carved deep, are the words I live by now. Stand your ground. Own your story. So to every man out there, sitting on his porch, coffee in hand, heart still half broken from the battles life handed him, remember this. When they come for what's yours, they won't knock. They'll draft, they'll document, they'll deceive. But if you know your land, your rights, your story, then they've already lost. Because there's nothing more dangerous to a liar than a man who refuses to forget where he comes from. I never forgot, and I never backed down. And that's why I'm still here, boots planted in red Arizona dirt, watching the sun rise over a ranch they tried to erase. They failed, because I remembered. And now, so will everyone else.